Hello everybody, welcome to Psychedelic Education. At the top of the description I will be updating in the future with all relevant links, as this is the first time I'm doing anything of this form, and I know I will evolve it into the future, but for now I believe this has been a long time coming, and the reason why is because here's my statement. I have mastered psilocybin mushrooms. I'm sure somewhat I'm ignorant on that statement, as in the past when I felt that way, I took a raging dose and then went into the meat locker for 10 hours straight, and then that's the best video on my channel in terms of editing and entertainment. It's called 7 gram terror trip, extreme bad trip, basically, where I went to hell and confronted like pure suicide madness for like 10 hours in like some super spiral. And I actually had that experience twice at the age of 16, or maybe 17. So I'm only 19 now, and I do feel I have mastered psychedelic mushrooms. So I've probably had a good 70 trips. I've done 7 grams numerous times, probably like 7-8 times. I've also synergized it a lot with cannabis. I've taken one trip with 2 tested LSD tabs of some dose with 4 grams of mushrooms, and basically my friends recently made, as friends seem to make you aware of things about yourself that you could not have gain the insight if it wasn't for your friends. And basically with meeting up with some very conscious psychedelic explorers recently, they made me aware that my knowledge on psychedelics is I'm somewhat of a shaman. Like, not literally, like I don't know how to conduct a fucking ceremony, or I mean I probably do somewhat, but I have the answers when it comes to mushrooms, and I trust them so deeply, so thoroughly these days, that I used to be terrified of what a 3-5, I look at a dose of 3.5 grams and go, fuck me, I know what that's capable of. But these days, they do nothing but make me much more conscious, much more aware. They seem to enhance my awareness, and anything they bring to the table, I have a deep understanding these days, and I believe I have a lot of deep knowledge, and this only comes from my ability to deal and withstand mindfully through these realms. So let's begin on the first point. So basically this is how to trip on mushrooms, and I'm going to be making catalogues of this form of content. So welcome to the first video of this, and like I say, relevant links in the top of the description. Okay, let's go. So first of all, bad trips. This is everybody's fear when going into the psychedelic realm, especially in the high doses. So I want to make an important distinction. There is a bad trip, there's a good trip, and then there's a terror trip. Like, ultimate, blown out of proportion fear. Now, the reason why I feel this is somewhat of a gift, although I probably went through a good, like, 18 hours of full-blown manic insanity at about the age of 17. They were both pretty close together. One was on 7 grams alone in my room. Again, check out the trip report in the description if you want to get a detailed description of how insane that and how far out that trip truly was. And I had another trip of the same nature, which is also on my channel, and I had that basically a simultaneous bad trip with my best friend. So they were very interesting. And then I feel like these are gifts because they shocked me so thoroughly to my core that it forever changed the way that I approached mushrooms. I can feel my body and my mind getting prepared. If I know that there's a trip coming, I'm very much more conscious. And it's actually almost like, and this is something Terence often speaks of, is the trip kind of recedes hours before you take the dose. And it's almost like your mind and your body knows where you're headed, so it prepares you. Right, so the distinction of a bad trip versus a full-blown terror trip. So I still have bad trips all the time. They become actually much more frequent. Bad trip, challenging trip. Terror trip, full-blown insanity of, oh my god, I did not know this was fucking possible, running away from reality. This is just like full-blown, get me the fuck out of whatever this curse of consciousness is. And I've had that a good 2 times full blast at a very young age. So how do I deal with trips mindfully these days compared to the terror trip before? So I believe the way that the terror trip really began for me back in the day was, and this is something Terence McKenna, he's an amazing teacher of psychedelics. I truly recommend you get very familiar with Terence McKenna and his teachings. If you just search How to Trip on Mushrooms by Terence, you should really be listening to him rather than me, maybe, I don't know. But so it's a matter of how conscious you are before going into the experience. And so if you've never taken an extremely far out dose before, then basically prepared to get pummeled. Most people, Actualize.org, Leo Gura, on even Terence McKenna, most people who trip on psychedelics, they don't have a full-blown mania trip because they are prepared. And statement I thought of is you cannot prepare enough, basically. Your setting, which is your external environment, this is a key to tripping on any psychedelic. And it's basically, how is your external environment set up? If you're looking to go deep, which I recommend you do, this is what psychedelics are used for. Psychedelics, for me, they're not really used for fun. They're used to gain radical insights that you could have never really anticipated. You get into realms and you could be thinking at the level of threading a needle very intensely, and you can go, I can't click very well. Aha! And you realise, and drugs in general have this tendency to make you realise profound things, but psychedelics in particular, they I'll give you a few examples. My very first video on this channel, I took about 4 grams, I laid down in silent darkness, and I wasn't feeling good about the trip. I was like, oh, I'm tired, maybe I shouldn't have tripped, but it confronted me with a very rude awakening, which was that I am trapped in a system of poverty and wage slavery. Traversing to work every 5-6 days of the week, 9.5-hour shift a day, investing an hour just getting there and back, driving, complex matrix of money, slavery. So it confronted me with this truth. And so before I went on this trip adventure, which is not a very good video, actually, my articulation was very poor. And the reason why I can articulate very good these days is because I observed how shit my articulation was then. Also, a lot of psychedelics, a lot of listening to lectures, and now I can articulate very good, which is a gift that my friends has helped me recognize a lot more. So before I took this trip, I was satisfied with the trajectory of my life. I had accepted, as my family say, you have to accept the treadmill of wage slavery, basically. You have to work. Now, I'm not going to get super deeply into the wage slave situation, but it's not like I don't want to work, but we're not going to get into that. I was satisfied with the trajectory of my life. So I thought, why would I return to psychedelics when I'm on a good path? Or so I thought. So the psychedelics revealed a radical truth that I could have never anticipated. And this is very important. Somebody had a psychedelic experience around me once upon a time, and they were very confident that they knew what mushrooms were. They've only had one 3.5 psychedelic mushroom trip. So a very important point is that if you've tripped previously, you still don't know what they are. If you've tripped 30 times, you still don't know what they are. Me, 70 times, radical doses, I still have no fucking idea what they can bring to the table. They are... Terence says they can bring many things that you can conceive of, like anything that you can conceive of can happen in a trip, and many things that you can't conceive of can happen in a trip. So the way I started this video saying I've mastered mushrooms, I'm not scared, I'd be careful saying that, because that is the ignorance that will throw you into the meat locker. So this person who I had an experience with very recently was confident he knew what mushrooms entailed, absolutely. So he wanted to take a super larger dose, and I was laughing to everyone else. I was like, wait until what's going to happen basically is like, if you take them with somebody, even if they're very confident that they know what's going to go on, they can take the dose. And this is how basically it goes down. They sit there, and what this individual started saying, and this is exactly what I anticipated would happen really, is like, he in particular was going, ooh, these ones are different, aren't they? It's like, yeah, it's not these ones. They're all the same substance, psilocybin. As far as my research has concluded, Reddit, that all different strains of psychedelic mushrooms contain the same compound, psilocybin. I think there's one other one that begins with a B, very rarely, but it all ultimately, it's very divided in the community. But the substance ultimately is psilocybin, but some people seem to think that other mushrooms give you a certain type of trip and other mushrooms give you a certain type. I don't know, they basically, you can't take a trip and then take a trip again and have it be basically the same. That does not happen. It's very rare. It's all dependent on your physiology, the dose, and set and setting. So not only is set and setting external, it's also internal. So Terence says before he goes into a trip, he basically tries to think about his life situation, his family situation, his social situation. He tries to anticipate every direction that it could go wrong or challenging. So yeah, this individual started going, ooh, and if he ever wants me to link his socials, I'll leave it below, but I don't know. And he's like, ooh, suffering. And then it's like, everyone's like, oh, what's going on? And then this is exactly what I said, is people take it and go, oh, I don't feel so good. And it is very scary. So basically, you have to discipline your hindbrain, which is radical things can happen which make you want to get up and act. But it's all, ultimately, the only thing you will suffer for in a trip will not be physiology basically. There is not a lethal dose of psychedelic mushrooms that you will have to worry about. As far as I'm aware, there is literally no lethal dose of psilocybin mushrooms. Don't quote me on that, but that is basically universally known to be the case. You cannot overdose on mushrooms. So you have not got there is a high possibility you will feel like you are dying. I've had it many times, mostly when I'm more ignorant, and maybe I've just like built a permanent tolerance, or I don't know, but a complete dissolving of all concepts, everything you thought you knew. So when you're listening to this, understand that you have no fucking idea, and neither do I. I still have no idea, and you basically cannot grasp it. It seems to be infinitely expanding, so it does not matter how many times you revisit this realm. It's always very different. Psych Substance says he revisited psilocybin a year later or something. It'd been a long time. He said they were literally absolutely completely different experience, 100%. Like incomprehensibly different. So you can't anticipate what it's going to bring to the table. So the certain setting you would like to control to the best of your ability. Now be careful about control, because control will ultimately destroy you. Some of the number one most important advice is to let go. If you hold on to who you thought you were before this radical new truth, this is where I got torn apart in the terror trip. It's because you resist reality. You want to change it. You take the dose. You wish you hadn't have taken the dose. Don't do that, for fuck's sake. It's an all or nothing thing. Don't take them on a whim, especially not a large dose in a social gathering if you're not experienced. The more conscious you are, the better. And you got to think, if you're just sat there, what's the worst that can happen? You have got nothing physically to worry about. So the only thing that you have to worry about is insanity, and maybe not necessarily, but a story in the mind. A story in the mind, and this goes into deeper teachings, and this is how mushrooms can be used for deeper spirituality, is that most people are a victim to their internal dialogue. So if you are heavily connected to the story in your mind, which is basically, I'm in my room and I've got a family and I've got some story about my past, like, yes, but you've got to identify that that is a story and it has nothing to do with this actuality that is right now. That is the present moment. And that's another thing. Get very familiar with the present moment, because if you're not prepared to confront it. I was talking to somebody, actualize.org has a short video on his clips channel called What is Spirituality About? Distinguishing actuality from concept or fantasy. Basically said, this is the closest you'll get to spirituality. It is actual, it is present. But some, like this individual who I was ranting at for 4 hours, I was trying to awaken him, which I'm now basically decided that I need to stop putting my energy in trying to wake up sheep and NPCs and spend my energy cultivating what I want instead. But this individual, even after watching this 10-minute perfect explanation of distinguishing actuality from concept, so here's actual, here's your hand, and now think of your hand. That's conceptual. But somehow, he returned after watching the video and after me trying to explain this to him for ages. Like I don't think he was trolling either, because he was like genuinely trying to understand what I was saying. He didn't get it. I almost find this absolutely impossible. Like, how can you not understand? But you got to understand that your understanding of reality may be so not the case, and you've got to have some humility to admit that, like, alright, maybe I don't know. Maybe the psychedelics can reveal some radical truth that I am not prepared for. It's not even necessarily a radical truth, but you get into a realm that is so unfamiliar, that you were so unprepared for, that you tried to run away from it because it's terrifying. And the main realm I seem to inhabit a lot of the time is presence. And some people get so tied up in the story in their mind, and this is the root of depression, by the way. It's a story in your mind. Welcome to the sensory field. No depression here. So it's this heavy identification with the story in the mind that our whole society really is a victim to. And if you want to get more familiar with this particular teaching, check out Eckhart Tolle, or Eckhart Tolle. I'll leave him linked below. So the way that the trip spiraled into a terror trip in my past, I believe, was the story in the mind was very responsible. I started thinking scary things, like, I don't remember how exactly it spiraled, but the main thing was I was thinking, oh, this is kind of bad, and I didn't know what that meant exactly. And I followed this thought, and I went, oh no, this is bad, isn't it? You're in a still room, still. Not necessarily, not if you take like DMT, you're going to be in fucking light dimension of entities, but it's a story in the mind can be your downfall on a trip. And you have to be very prepared to confront an unrecognizable realm that you could have never anticipated. That is very good advice. So, back to the original point I started this off, and I'm going to run out of storage, so this is just like a on a whim recording, and I'm, like I say in the description, that's where I'm going to put the updated, more contemplated. I'm going to do a lot more contemplation. I'm generating a lot more of my own insights these days, so get ready, because it will be epic. But I have a bad trip and I can observe it basically these days. If I take a big dose, and like they can be very bad experiences or bad challenging confrontations of For example, there was one not long ago. I just realised my whole behaviour, the way I act, is just completely out of order. I mean, it was quite a while ago, maybe like 6 months, and I was just saying like, yeah, why the fuck do I act like this? And you basically confront your subconscious mind. So what you're thinking in this sober state of your ideas about it. A good example is I brought a virtual reality headset intentionally for psilocybin mushrooms because I thought virtual reality plus mushrooms, that would be sick. No. When you actually get into that realm, what you anticipate when you're sober is not the case. Your subconscious and your normal consciousness basically somewhat merge, and you can have your subconscious, aka everything that's been ticking over, like minor insecurities about, or if you don't really like yourself, or like just little things like that you don't actually ever let yourself confront when you're sober, and you have the ability to withstand it when you're sober, and it's not like you actually have to withstand it, it just doesn't come forth. But if you take a like 5 grams in silent darkness, that's, I should have said that at the beginning, don't take it externally and fucking around. And I'm not telling anybody to do anything. I'm gonna have to fucking edit this and put a warning. But your subconscious basically pours forth. So, look, I'm running out of storage. But there's that, mate. I hope that helped. Keep updated, join the Discord, and I'll have a lot more valuable information in the future. Thank you.